a couple of weeks ago, the IAEA comes out, that's the International Atomic Energy Association, and says that they are significantly concerned that Iran is now reconstituting a nuclear weapons program. Now, they didn't quite say that, but they said a lot of things that made people think that, and then you got the headlines in the New York Times, etc. And the IAEA, so you know, has a lot of credibility. It was run by Mohammed al-Baradei, and they did a great job of checking the nuclear program that Iran had in the 1980s through the 1990s. That gained them credibility. But they also had credibility because they questioned the Bush administration when they had bad information on Iraq and on Iran. So when the IAEA came out with that report, I came out here on the Young Turks and said, whoa, that's something to be concerned about. These are not just some neocons, pretending to have intelligence when we know that's not the case. So I wonder if Iran is in fact doing that. Well, Seymour Hersh now has a terrific report that shows that's not necessarily the case and why we might not be able to trust the IAEA as much anymore. So first, let me tell you why it's not a very good case. Classic example here, New York Times in the front section runs the story about, oh my God, Iran might be going back into nuclear weapons. But then they ran a second story where they had this quote that Hersh points out. They say, quote, "It is true that the basic allegations in the report are not substantially new and have been discussed by experts for years." In other words, they actually have nothing new at all. Let's continue. They say that the source is actually a single source. It's from Western intelligence, and the IAEA is relying then on Western intelligence, who will not tell us where that source is coming from at all. The provenance of that source has not been established. So this evidence now is getting weaker and weaker. And that, in fact, Robert Kelly, who's the retired IAEA director, says this is, quote, old news. So there's nothing new here. And remember, when they refer to old news, in 2007, even our intelligence came out and said Iran is not working on a weapons program, okay? So it's one thing to work on an nuclear energy program, it's another thing to work on a nuclear weapons program. So when they cite it as old news, it's something we knew already when we had our assessment that they are not working on a weapons program. It gets worse. Arms Control Association is a nonprofit group whose whole mission is to make sure that we have non-proliferation. They do not want nuclear weapons. They say there is trouble evidence suggesting that the studies are still going on, but there is nothing that indicates that Iran is really building a bomb. Nothing, okay? And then a senior IAEA official, another one, coming out saying, I was, quote, underwhelmed by the information. So as you look at this, it does not look like there's altogether that much to be concerned about, despite all the media and the press that you saw about, oh my God, the Iranians are coming with a nuclear weapons program. And by the way, one last piece here. The report did note that on-site camera inspection process of their facilities, and remember, this agency has cameras at Iran's nuclear facilities, quote, continues to verify the non-diversion of declared nuclear material. In other words, they are not diverting it from the energy program into a weapons program. Not diverting it. So it's the exact opposite of what our press reported. So the question is why? Well, Seymour Hersh has an answer to that as well. Remember that Mohammed al-Baradei is no longer with the IAEA. There's a new regime. It's a gentleman by the name of Yukiya Amano of Japan who's now leading it. And through WikiLeaks, we find out what Amano's been up to and what our views of it are, the U.S. intelligence officials and the U.S. administration. Well, there was a U.S. embassy cable from Vienna that said that Amano was, quote, ready for prime time. The reason they say that is that's their way of saying, don't worry, he's on our side. He'll give us what we want. Well, they got a lot more specific. In September of 2009, Glenn Davies, who's America's permanent representative to the IAEA, said this about Amano, quote, Amano reminded Ambassador on several occasions that he would need to make concessions to the G77, that's the group of developing countries, which correctly required him to be fair-minded and independent, but that he was solidly in the U.S. court on every strategic decision, from high-level personnel appointments to the handling of Iran's alleged nuclear weapons program. So there it is. There's, again, because of WikiLeaks we find this out, otherwise we wouldn't have known it at all. Our guy's saying, don't worry, this new guy at the IAEA is totally on our side. In order to be fair, he'll pretend to be with the third world countries, pretend to be fair in essence, and then he will support us, including on the Iran inspections, whatever message we want to push out. And then finally, they said the fact that he is the new leadership there, quote, bodes well for our future relationship. So, should you be concerned about Iran's nuclear weapons program? Apparently not. Apparently it's the neocons still in our administration, still in our intelligence network, drumming this up, putting it out to the press, just like they did with Iraq, and getting the right people and the right organizations to play ball. Actually, that's scarier than anything else, because that means we might be heading toward another war, not because of Iran, but because of our neoconservatives.